All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. It's a book club Monday, 9 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast, and it is the third session that we've got here for the Robe, Lloyd C. Douglas. And my, oh my, it's been just a wonderful trip, especially in those starting at the last days of Lent and throughout Easter. And I've got a wonderful co-host who is with me right now. Once again, let me get this off the screen. Here he is again, Stephen Jonathan. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Frank. Great to be back, as usual.
Absolutely. So let me just ask you just some general thoughts. What do you think about this now? This section of reading right up to, I believe it was the end of chapter 13, or we're staring 13 in the face. I forget.
No, that's right. Through chapter 13.
Right. Yes. Go ahead.
And the speed of the roller coaster increases. It just unexpected twists and turns everywhere. And I think joyful at every turn.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Very joyful at this point. Now, here's the thing for me, though. There has to be a point where this is disrupted in some way. The joy aspect, because there is something that you can see here. And it is one thing that I had really kind of appreciated about watching The Chosen when I jumped into that. It was that for the first time, I was really looking at things from the perspective of the apostles, where you are part of a growing and significant spiritual, cultural revolution kind of a moment, where if you're going to go out there and do what you believe you have to do, then that means you have to disrupt the apple cart. There is no way to go about what Jesus and his disciples were going out there to accomplish by staying low key. And at this point, when your leader has been eliminated, everything is secret. Everything is underground. We are starting to see this culture here where there is a really, I think it was, where was it? Hold on. It's on page 230. Right around where we'll get to the, chronologically we'll get there. But when we start being able to watch Miriam, play her music and sing and all that stuff, it's at this point where Marcelas, he's made his way back into the Holy Land, and he is rubbing shoulders with apostles and known the fellow travelers. The fact that there was that Easter egg right there where he saw Mary and John together. That was an amazing Easter egg right there. I was like, oh, that's definitely the Blessed Mother. And but at this point, it's around 2:30 where I'm seeing this here, that the faith is all really unspoken, where it is a secret language everybody who followed Christ is compelled to engage in, where they're talking very vaguely about him. They're talking very vaguely about their beliefs, because it's just, at this point, it's a defense mechanism. So it's really incredible. And when you have that as a backdrop, you have to imagine at some point there's going to be a hammer is going to fall on someone. I don't know what it is, but that's just what my gut feeling says. I don't know about you.
Well, the history's written. I think it's inevitable. The entire theme is about the cross and about the crucifixion and redemption on the other side. So I think it'll be a series of ups and downs, just like you do. And the hammer's going to fall. It's a secret society, but not unlike today. If you think about it, we're in an age, a bizarre age, where the powers that be, the political powers, literally will not allow us to say true things in public. It's getting back to that point. So yes, that's something to reflect on.
I know. And when you think about the situation that we're in right now, the fact that general statements about, I don't know, biological realities is something that can get you, unpersoned is, right. That's it. I mean, this right here is, we're talking about salvation and saving souls. But the fact that in the 21st century, like I said, basic biological realities of the world is something that you have to walk on eggshells. This book really makes you contemplate, how much in a better position are we, if at all? Anyway.
Not much better.
No. Okay, so then I guess to start from the beginning with just some generalized thoughts. Marcelas, his situation is completely flipped.
Yeah.
And in these chapters, whereas his relationship with Demetrius has always been affectionate, it is now turning into a mutual and strategic partnership because they are both being driven by a shared purpose. They want to know more. They need to know more about Jesus. And Marcellus, he still struggles with his participation in the execution, but the mystical quality about Jesus's accepting of his fate is starting to overshadow the grief and is actually fueling the investigation. For example, on page 147, we have this line. I love this word. It's in chapter 9. Where the heck is it?
That's in the 150s.
Oh, wait, Marcellus is. Where is this? Oh, wait, hold on. 147.
Starts on 153.
Wait, I think I have it. I have it underlined over here. Let me get it out. Here we go. We have this line. It's hard to explain. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. But Demetrius, she interrupted, turning to look up at his face. What was there about Jesus that made him seem like such a great man? You say he was lonely and disappointed that morning when the crowd wanted him as their king. But what had he done that so many people admired him so much? He says, it's hard to explain, he stammered. You had a feeling that he was sorry for all these people. This may sound foolish, Theodosia, but it was as if they were homeless little children crying for something, and something he couldn't give them, she wondered thoughtfully. There you have it. It was something he couldn't give them because they were too little and inexperienced to understand what they needed. Maybe this seemed a crazy thing to say. It was almost as if this Galilean had come from some faraway country where people were habitually honest and friendly and did not quarrel, some place where the streets were clean and no one was greedy, and there were no beggars, no thieves, no fights, no courts, no prisons, no soldiers, no rich, no poor. And this is something that I think is just what is driving them all. And I think it's what puts away the grief of what their involvement on that day might have been, like Marcellus, because perhaps this was a mission that needed to be completed. And if that is the case, then I just need to know more about what that mission was, and I need to know now.
That's right. What a profound line. I love the reference to us as little children. Of course, that includes us, that oftentimes we don't know what that thing we're yearning for that would satisfy us the most is. And C.S. Lewis says, we're like children being satisfied playing with mud pies when beyond the horizon is heaven. You know, it's a really great illustration Douglas does there of that notion. And we all long for that eternal reward. We're such children, we wouldn't know it if it were staring us in the face.
Yeah. And the eternal reward thing pops up a lot there too, because it's juxtaposed against the temporariness of the exhilaration we feel as human beings. I really love the way he articulated this. I think it's around the beginning of chapter 9. This was chapter 9. We see more of this growing of the growth within Marcellus as a character, where the investigation, this drive for information, has invigorated him to the point where he describes the state of being in a way where, you know, that in that phase after you're recovering from an illness and you have a new lease on life. Like I love at the tail end of being sick. I love the tail end of being sick, because when you see the improvement in your quality of health, all of a sudden comes that perspective, that gratitude. I'm getting better. And, you know, where the flowers never smelled better, where you feel a connection with every little thing. You're just so happy. And I love this here. It says, but this amazing experience with the robe was something that could not be dismissed with a mere I do not understand. So let it be considered a closed incident. No, it was a problem that had to be dealt with somehow. Marcellus gave himself to a serious reflection. First of all, the robe has symbolized the whole shameful affair in Jerusalem. The man who wore it has been innocent of any crime. He has been unfairly tried, unjustly sentenced, and dishonorably put to death. He has borne the pain with admirable fortitude. No, something besides fortitude. The best that fortitude can accomplish was courageous endurance. This Jesus had not merely endured, it was rather as if he confronted his tragedy, he had gone to meet it. So you can see he's a man who's especially in this chapter, he's fumbling for something, looking for something to put his faith into for the first time, because he doesn't believe in the old gods. And you can tell that his Geiger counter tells him he's close to something, you know?
That's right.
So
That's right. And I was going to begin at the exact same spot. The very first line of chapter 9 is, walking at dawn, Marcelas was ecstatic to find himself unencumbered by the weight that so long had oppressed him. It was the first time he had ever realized the full meaning of freedom. And I think this theme of freedom is what we're looking for, because he beautifully goes back to that physical oppression of malaise, sickness. But then we realize he's not talking, this is just an analogy. He's talking about a spiritual oppression.
yeah.
Which is radically different, but it's analogous. So it makes sense that for the first time he's liberated from this spiritual sickness. And we finally, for the first time in the book, it's uncovered for us that it's certainly not the robe as a magical instrument, but it's something interior, something moving in his soul. And he was justified in feeling as oppressed as he was, because he explains later that it's because in front of drunken people, he mocked the good man who showed courage, who did no wrong, who was unjustly executed. And this is genius for us to know that even if we're not aware of it, our souls will be oppressed and depressed if we participate in injustice like that. Marcelas was a virtuous enough man to be aware of it. And this is key for us. And the word I really want to focus on here in the beginning is freedom. We have really reduced notions of freedom. So freedom from sickness makes sense to us. Freedom from intellectual and moral error doesn't make sense to us today. And it didn't make sense to them back then either. That's the nature of being fallen. It's that we can't see the thing from which we need to be liberated. And for the first time, Marcelas encountered an awareness of that oppression. And we'll talk later about slavery, but I just want to throw that over the bow. Just as you did.
I'm glad that you did. You went that deep with it there too, because in thinking about modern society, there is something very, very serious to be said about not being able to detect why we feel unfulfilled, and why the things that we continue to do, and for everybody it could be something different, why the things we throw ourselves into that's supposed to make us feel good or whatever the hell is actually bringing us into the other direction. And of course, the frustration that comes along with that feeling of oppression. It's a spiritual oppression. Of course, once you go back to school or once you put on your favorite, influencer, they'll tell you that feeling of oppression is coming from a certain, class in society, or it's coming from a certain race or a certain gender, or, whatever. They're trying to assign earthly enemies to go after and causes to fight, that at the end of it will be some sort of a feeling of fulfillment. But really, it's just that we're all so soul sick. And because that's not a conscious part of being alive these days, to dig deeper into that aspect of ourselves, it's always completely misdiagnosed and mistreated. And it's a wonderful thing. And of course, that whole duality of freedom and slavery in this has been huge since page 1.
Chapter 1.
Yeah. So there's that.
That's right. That's right. I love that you went that deep too, Frank. And, really, like, modern psychology, modern schooling, modern education, modern everything attributes an exterior cause to our interior problems. And that's what Marcelas is learning. And it's even more profound for us today to learn that. So great point.
Demetrius is having a good time. Really, you can tell, even though now he officially has been given his papers of manumission from Marcelas. Still, he wants to keep up appearances. He wants to keep up appearances of this, and managing appearances is very important. He's so smart, Demetrius, and but I do love his interactions with Theodosia as well. I like how he is nurturing all of his own personal relationships on the side, and those are really those two are getting close. And there's a really great exchange here. I love this one quote from Theodosia about the peaks and valleys of inspiration. This is when you read, this is the kind of thing when you read in a book, doesn't matter what the subject is, when the author hits on something that you say, yes, okay, good. I feel good about myself because I know I'm not the only one. She said, my Aunt Imo once said to me when I was desperately lonely and blue, that our life is like a land journey, too even and too easy and over long distances, across plains too hard and painful, up the steep grades. But on the summits of the mountain, you have a magnificent view, and you feel exalted, and your eyes are full of happy tears, and you want to sing, and you wish you had wings, and then you can't stay there, but must continue your journey, and you begin climbing down the other side of the mountain. But with your footholds and everything else you have to concentrate on with the climb, your summit experience is forgotten. And that right there, I brought that up with a guest of mine maybe about a month or so ago. I talk about my wedding day being just the peak that I was telling all my groomsmen in the car as we were driving to the ceremony. I said, guys, I got to find a way to bottle this and bring it to the show. I got to find a way to duplicate this feeling every day. And then you just, you give it a week, and you gotta walk back down that mountain, and you're just like, it's gone. It's gone. I loved this right here. It really is. It's very, very human.
Very human. What page was that quote on that you just read?
That one, let me see here. Darn.
Sorry, I didn't mean to pin you down.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It has to be very soon. Where it is. Okay, it's on page 165, fourth paragraph down.
There you go.
165, yeah. But so that's big right there. Obviously, there is the confrontation with Quintis, where Demetrius busts him up. He has to get the hell out of there. He's now beat up a centurion who had it coming, but you knew that this was going to be Demetrius's reason to go back to Palestine. As far as Benjamin goes, before he leaves, talk a little bit about your thoughts about Benjamin, the character, how this became a really, really awesome sage character to help bring, not only to help equip both Demetrius and Marcelas with some Aramaic that they can learn when they go on this quest together, but also Benjamin becomes a guy who really helps bring prophecy and scripture to life for the reader as well, especially when it comes to analyzing the news that he was receiving about, this Jesus. And I love even like the wry smiles he would give Marcelas when asking him, are you sure he's really dead? Things like that. So talk a little bit about Benjamin, what you picked up from him.
Yeah, Benjamin, he's the wise man, the wizard, and he is their guide, and he always holds back too. You can tell that Demetrius and Marcelas really don't know what they ought to reveal to him. And Benjamin also is very wise about knowing that the Greek and the Roman are not friendly to their cultures, but nonetheless, he takes them in when he sees the homespun. He's deeply moved and will repair it for free. And he recognizes their interest in Jesus. And I love that. But then he starts instructing them. And one of my favorite dialogues, and it's long, is what Benjamin says to Marcelas about slaves and slavery. And I won't read it. I've got so many underlined passages starting on page 72, when Benjamin is saying, you don't rob a slave of his divine character when you buy him and hitch him to a plow between an ox and an ass. He has no choice in the matter. So he really flips the slavery script on Marcelas, and I love that. And he convicts Marcelas. He said, yeah, but I'm really good to my slaves. He said, I'm sure you are. Sure, you're just great. But you don't understand. Your spirit of being, when you enslave another man who is freed by God, you are making yourself an animal. And Rome will fall, not from the outside, but from the inside. I love that line on page 177. He said, I do not think you're a cruel man, my son, he declared gently, but you are an unfortunate representative of a cruel system. Perhaps you cannot help yourself.
Yes.
What a line. What a conviction.
Oh, and shortly after that, I had this on page 177, I had this underlined. I left the city before sunrise the next morning, replied Marcelas. Ah, reflected Benjamin, stroking his white beard. Then you heard nothing further about him. What more was there to hear? He was dead. Do you, the old man hesitated, do you know that for a certainty? Yes, declared Marcelas, I am sure of it. And I love how, without knowing, Benjamin asks him, were you there? That was the line that he was saying when he was in the depths of his madness. Were you there? Were you out there? Were you there? Benjamin's cavernous eyes insisted upon a direct answer. It was slow in coming. I saw him die, admitted Marcelas. They pierced his heart to make sure before they took him down. To his amazement, Benjamin's seamed face lighted with a rapturous smile. I mean, it's stuff like that. It's just like, you know, what little birds were chirping in Benjamin's ear? All those, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I
thought it was interesting that Benjamin was a Samaritan, too.
Yeah.
You know, you have the parable of the Good Samaritan, who, and they're kind of natural enemies of the Galileans. So I thought that was really wonderful. And he said they emphasized work, toil, and the workday, while the Galileans were more spiritual. And I thought that was a beautiful comparison. But he was the wise man there, and he certainly was their guide. And interestingly, there's more to learning Aramaic than just learning Aramaic. It truly becomes the logos or the platform or the blueprint to understand the entire narrative in eyes that the Greeks and the Romans just didn't have.
Yes.
So I thought that was really vital.
Yes, that absolutely. Let's see, what else do I have here? There's a couple other Easter eggs. You know, I said before it was great to just see without actually addressing it. Blessed Mother and John, you know, they were affectionate with the older woman and the younger man. What else do I have? Oh, Demetrius's letter. Okay, so he flies the coop because he beats up Quintis. Then he sends a letter back. To Marcelas to try to make some suggestions on how he should proceed forward with keeping up appearances and to not being made as a Roman spy, because people are, again, it's a very, very sensitive, intense thing. The people who conspired against Jesus to kill him, they want to make sure that kind of rabble rousing is not going to be done by any of his apostles or anything like that. So obviously we're talking about a cloaked system here, and you got to be very, very careful with how you work your way in. So I think the suggestion was for Marcelas to go to the Holy Land, acting as a homespun fabrics connoisseur,
right?
To try to shake off suspicion.
A merchant,
merchant, pretty much. But I did love this, that in Demetrius's letter, there was another little Easter egg in there that it makes the reader wonder: did he stay at the inn in Bethlehem? It sounds like to me that he stayed at the inn in Bethlehem. I don't know what page that was in. But
I remember that he gave reference. And you got the sense that he was right where Joseph and Mary and Jesus were, or soon to be born Jesus were, right?
Yeah, no, that's he's talking about it. Oh man, I gotta find it. But anyway, okay. So then, just some summarizing thoughts about Marcelas, his trip out there now to the Holy Land. He's starting on his trek. Justus, the big fisherman, I guess that's Peter. I think
so. Yeah, the big fisherman.
It's got to be, although he has not met him yet.
No, right. He hasn't met all of them yet as he makes his way down there. I think he's prepared to be savvy about it, and he's gracious and tricky. But without the Aramaic, it may have never happened. But I love that he met Stephanos, right, the Greek, or Demetrius befriended Stephanos. And Stephanos got the whole story out of Demetrius. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And Stephanos said, you know what? I want to see if John the Apostle recognizes you, because when I saw you, I know I was waiting for you, but when I saw you, I recognized you from the cross. And so they're worried that Marcelas is going to be recognized as one of the ones who literally killed Jesus to the apostles. But he said John his head was so in the clouds that he didn't recognize him. I thought that was interesting. John,
yeah.
Did you remember that part?
It's actually vague to me, that part.
Okay, so when he was with Mary, I hope I got that right, because
you probably did.
He was if they recognize Marcelas as one of the ones who crucified Jesus, there's no way they're going to open up to him.
Right, absolutely.
There's no chance unless they really believed in the confidence that they were convicted by Christ and this injustice and did the 180 repentance.
Yeah, the 180 is big there. It's crazy how a couple of times I loved it there, because there's a lot of patience even with the writing, to get so close in conversation where Marcelas knows people are referencing Jesus. he probably, so as a character, wants to so badly ask directly about him, but needs to have the self-control to just dial it back and let this thing just develop a little bit more slowly, because you can tell that this is just it's big. Here, you know, that part 206 is the dead middle of the letter between Demetrius and Marcelas.
Yeah.
He says this, on that last night of my journey, I was pleasantly surprised by being permitted to sleep in the stable of a tavern in the village of Bethlehem. In the morning, the innkeeper sent his servant with a dish of hot broth and a small loaf of wheaten bread. The servant said it was custom of the inn to befriend impoverished travelers. Come on, man.
100%, yeah.
I wrote it right there by my underlining. I said, no way.
Yeah.
So that's just great. That's just little fun things in there.
Yeah.
Tons
of those. That's beautiful.
Tons. Okay. So at that point, then we get to Miriam. This is really where we start seeing a little bit more of the people of the faith. Miriam, she's crippled.
Yeah.
But the real thing here is, whereas Jonathan, the boy who Marcelas gives the donkey to, whereas he had a foot that was mangled and was fixed by Jesus.
Right.
Miriam is still crippled physically, but it was, for her real handicap was overcoming the physical impediment, and was still able to let her soul soar, even in her limited physical state. So I love that. I love that for each person. It wasn't just a matter of, hey, what ailment do you have, and let's get you all fixed up. It's really just about, again, saving souls. And so Miriam is real. What do you think about her as a character, from everything right to the point where she knows that Marcelas is not a homespun fabrics connoisseur, and that he's on the road to learn something different?
Yeah, she's super clear-sighted. Remember, she was given the gift of the voice later in life. She's young still, but she was given the gift of voice and singing. And I think this language, this universal language, opened her up to the realities of the soul. And Jesus put her soul to rights in a way that confounds the world. Even Marcelas probably was thinking, wait, you're still crippled. What are you so joyful about?
Right.
And that's what we all miss, is that to get the soul in order, the soul liberation is much more profound than the physical liberation of young Jonathan, who's a small boy getting his foot straightened out. And that's a beautiful miracle, but it's nothing like the joyful song of Miriam, and she delights the world. And that's more to convert souls than the miracle of straightening out the foot.
That's it. And that's essentially where we are right now. At the end of those segments, there's a lot of little things in between, but we're going to get to everybody's observations in the chat now. And yeah, I think what we should do is, just so I'll say it again at the end. We ended with page 236. So chapter 14, it'll be page 237. I think we should go until page, I had it marked right over here, 237 to 305. It's just about 75 to 80 pages again, 237 to 305. And that is the end of chapter 16. So that'll be a good place to do that. But let's see what other people had noticed. All right, first one
of course,
is, let's see, I'm going to work from the back to the front this time. Here we go. First one up is from NJSF, and he's got a couple of things here, quite a few. It was masterfully crafted, the way the story of Demetrius and Marcelas gets woven within the clandestine and underground nature of early Christianity. The clandestine, there's that, yeah. It really felt like it's a small world, and so much more in the Eastern Mediterranean. The cast of characters gets additional star power through the presence of the apostles and almost apostles and people that receive miracles from Jesus. Speaking of characters, how amazing is that Demetrius again declines the formal letter of freedom. It almost becomes quite clear that the real friendship bond between him and Marcelas, it does seem like Demetrius, while formerly a slave, is really the freer of the two. Also, the bravery and righteousness of Demetrius is again on display, from the story how he saved Flavius's life on the ship on the trip from Jerusalem to Rome, as well as the defense of Theodosia's honor. The dialogue discussing deep philosophical and theological subjects were beautiful. The way that the disclosure of events from the life of Jesus and his preaching from justice to Marcelas unfolds is so interesting to read. The best dialogue, though, for me, to sum up the human condition, is this exchange between Miriam and Marcelas, weaved in the critique to slavery. It is the message that comes through is really which the physical slavery can one break and be free spiritually and emotionally. And he says that it must seem odd to own another human being, reflected Miriam. Do you keep them locked up, or they not, or when they're not working? By no means, Marcelas dismissed the query with a toss of his hand. They are free to go anywhere they please. Indeed, exclaimed Miriam. Don't they ever run away? Not often. There's no place for them to go. That's too bad, Miriam sighed. They'd be better off in chains, wouldn't they? Then maybe they could break loose. As it is, the whole world is their prison. I never thought about it before, pondered Marcelas. But I suppose the whole world is a prison for everyone. Is anyone entirely free? What constitutes freedom? The truth, answered Miriam quickly. The truth sets anyone free. If it weren't so, I might feel quite fettered myself, Marcellus Gallio. My country is owned by a foreign master, and because of my lameness, I may seem to have very little liberty, but my spirit is free. I know I underlined that line, that last line.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah.
Woo.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's the crux. That's the whole bit. Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot more. There's a lot more here. Let me go through everything else before I get through what other NJSF has done, because we can spend our entire night on just his undertakings there. Mark
That's
G.
right.
Says, I was struck by Justus's story of the wealthy man who asked Jesus how he can get what he wanted. Jesus told him he was too heavily weighed with the things and that he should give them up and follow him. Justus said, I suppose that was the first time he ever really wanted something that he couldn't afford. The ability to just let go of all your stuff when confronted with something that you know will fulfill you in a completely different way is truly a leap of faith. We look at people like this after the fact and say, how could you not go with him? I wonder what percentage of people would part with their possessions for a life-changing opportunity with no guarantees and just a gut feeling that it was what we were all called to do. Ooh, that's a...
Oh, and yeah. And the young man was virtuous, and Jesus loved him for his good character, and he still didn't give up the goods.
Huge. That's a great question.
We should all dwell on that.
Yeah. No, that's a great question at the end there, Mark.
The devastating question.
Jalen Wenning says, Demetrius' letter in chapter 11. Yep. Demetrius' letter, how he described the early Christians using the fish symbol to keep their faith hidden from persecution, really reminds me of a modern-day social media. Post anything remotely religious and the blue hair fact checkers come out in full force. With the actually Christmas was a pagan holiday, or Jesus was a black man, or Jesus was trans, all that BS. And God forbid here in Ohio you celebrate your Italian heritage and post Happy Columbus Day. The Ukraine flags will bombard you with their facts. Also, Demetrius dishing out that beatdown was the best beatdown I've ever read. I know. Lloyd, I don't know if Lloyd C. Douglas had gotten into a lot of fistfights in his life, but the way that he describes pummeling a human face is fantastic.
Really great. Really great.
I love it. It's just I think he said something like I think the use of the word ruined, like he ruined his face. And I was just like, damn, that is.
And the last few punches were spongy.
Oh God. Yes, exactly. It's fantastic. It really is. Okay.
And in the middle, he's contemplating, should I finish him or should I went a little light so he could punish him more. I thought that was awesome.
Absolutely.
What an animal that Quintis was. What a beast.
Big time beast.
He got what was coming to him.
Now, what happened with Quintis found his way into Palestine as well, and Demetrius had to go on the run. What that happened? What happened?
Was that? I didn't run across that yet, but I read past it. I wonder if I missed that.
I think it was it might have been Justice or somebody there. They were talking about Demetrius and how he had to go on the lam a little bit because a centurion had either followed him, maybe they were on the same boat or something. I just assumed that it was Quintis.
Okay, that would only make sense.
Perhaps.
I thought it was dealt with when Quintis went to Marcelas and said, "You're going to jail, and I'll have him killed." And Marcelas says, "I'll go with you because they're going to laugh at you. You're an idiot."
Yeah.
And you got into an altercation with a slave who beat you viciously. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
And so that didn't happen. So I thought that was into Quintis. So I missed that. I'm glad to be aware of it because I'm going back and rereading it for a second time.
Hey, I hope I'm right. That's just the way I interpreted it, because at that point I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it makes sense that the people retelling the story, they don't know Quintus's name. They just know he was a centurion. And what other centurion has it out for Demetrius at that point? So I anyway. Okay, so
right. No, you must be right. I'm going to go back and find out. It's awesome.
And if I'm going to speculate now that you got me thinking, I can see Quintis being I can see him becoming a bigger problem. If he becomes obsessed with trying to figure out what Marcelas and Demetrius are up to, he can possibly get them in trouble with Gaius, because he's Gaius's toady, and Gaius hates them. So,
Gaius hates them because what Diana got him moved contrary to Gaius's commands anyway. Yeah. Right.
So,
and they're both men of very small soul. They're mean, little, tiny men. Great portrayal of that.
Right. And yeah, so I would say watch out for that possible thread developing there, because, man, it's one of those situations you go back and you're just like, I don't want anybody to go and necessarily kill somebody, but that is one person that Demetrius probably should have finished off. Okay. Anyway, Cigar Kid says, Mr. Jonathan brought up last week how Christ changed his life and turned it 180 degrees. I would love to hear that story if it hasn't already been brought up. So far, this book is just masterfully written, and biblical history lesson and historical lesson of the culture of those times. I'm just absolutely loving this book. Marcelas, laughing at the drunken prince's antics, was given a death blow by being sent to the worst possible place a Roman of his stature could possibly be stationed, was actually a saving grace. So if you're in a bad spot or given the worst news, hope and grace just might be right around the corner. Sometimes people find Christ, but most of the time he finds you at your very lowest and your most miserable state. That is love. That is a father. And as far as your personal story, Stephen, we can save that for the last night or something like that.
Yes, of course. I'm so happy to say it because it glorifies God. Because I don't think it got much worse than a guy like me as a secular humanist for 30 years, 40 years. So, but
again, that is so perfectly said, because there are a lot of people out there searching, doing the searching, kicking over every rock, going to any house of worship they are, just getting in whatever. For those who are looking for the transcendent, that's just one of those things where it's hard to say when it will arrive at your door. Does it always show up searching for you? If your heart is open, I suppose. But yeah, to think that Manoah was a curse, but he was there.
Yeah, it was a blessing. Yeah. And in fact, Cigar Man, is it Cigar Man? I love his comments, by the way. But I was in Manoah, and I went to the worst job, the worst place. I literally cursed the world when God infuses into my soul. I'll tell you guys on the last day. So,
now I can't wait.
Very true. It's very true.
Robert Solario says, is it the Holy Spirit that moves through the robe? On page 154, Marcelas receives, quote, an exultant sense of complete cleansing and renewal. He feels, quote, gratitude to some kindly spirit who might be credited with this ineffable gift, end quote. Quote, here's another one. He had been singularly blessed, but the gift was anonymous. Page 155. Its touch had healed his wounded mind. Demetrius on page 156. It isn't as if we were required to comprehend it. There are plenty of things that we are not expected to understand. On page 165, Theodosia says the problem is too big for the both of you. The author on page 167 writes of Marcelas, quote, a reshaping of his preconceived theories about supernatural phenomena. On page 185, Gallo sighs and says, this case is full of mystery. On page 187, Tiberius says, Marcelas shall give us a youthful view of the mysteries. And Demetrius on 197, perhaps that is part of it, will always be a mystery. Miriam as well on 233, I did not earn my freedom, it was a gift. It is a secret. I recently saw an interview by Maria Z with her father, Peter Hears. He speaks to many mysteries in the Gospels and says, how could we expect to understand them with our puny human brains? As I continue to read the Robe, it's good to focus on which part of the Holy Trinity the author writes of, the Father, the Son, or the Holy Spirit.
Wow. Okay. I prepared some comments for that. Do you mind?
Please.
Gosh, those are all just such great examples of digging deeper and allowing this story to make us part of these things. But the robe is likened to the sacramentals in the church, which are not efficacious, they're instrumental. So the robe itself is not the source of this healing. You got it just right. It's the Holy Spirit conferring graces upon Marcelas through the robe. So it would be superstitious to think that the robe itself was effecting change when it was instrumental. And I think they said it on 155. The robe was instrumental. The author makes us think about that difference. So when we think of efficacy or efficient causality, we've got to give that a spiritual source. And when we think of instrumentality, this is the symbol or the sign, the thing through which, the visible sign of grace, the thing through which the power really works. So that's why Marcelas is not superstitious. And in the modern world, ironically, when materialists accuse religious people of being superstitious, it's really just them looking in a mirror. But it is indeed the power and the grace of God coming through the instrumental cause of the robe, because it's not the robe itself. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it does. You know, let me ask you this, because I know that you're Catholic, and so when we talk about efficacy, and then of course the opposite side of that, how do you square transubstantiation of the Eucharist? Because that's a situation where the church tells us that it literally becomes the body and blood of Jesus Christ, and not a symbol through which we put our own will into it. It's a physical reality. How do you square that?
It's just a miracle. It's the gift. It's the miracle when Christ says, "This is my body." It becomes under the appearances of bread and wine, and those appearances are the instrument. But the transubstantiation means its literal substance goes from that of bread and wine by a miracle of grace and sheer gift into the body and blood of Jesus Christ. So the transubstantial means it goes across by miracle from bread to the real thing. It is the body of Christ and the blood of Christ in the Eucharist and the wine, in the bread and wine.
Gotcha.
Did that make sense?
It did, actually. It actually made better sense that it's never been explained to me. So, and that's what I'm saying. These are things that I'm piecing back together, and
Sure.
A lot of things are happening. But that's something I had actually been asking myself the last couple of. Here's another question I've been asking. You look at all these, especially over the last couple of weeks with the winding down of Lent and into Easter and beyond. You contemplate the passion, the death, the resurrection, and I'm reading certain chapters and passages in the Bible, and also watching so many religious films. Putting the Passion of the Christ on again, things like that, and you start thinking. I start thinking to myself, how on earth did we know what these private exchanges between Christ, Jesus, and Pontius Pilate was, if nobody was around? Who recorded these exchanges? None of the apostles were around. There's some pretty intimate things that are in the Gospels that the apostles were Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John was the only one around for the death. But there's a lot of things you wonder. That's at least I wonder. Where did those recounting coming from?
Well, there are many, many different sources. One is Christ himself. Remember, he resurrected from the dead, and he appeared to the ladies first, and then to the apostles on the road to Emmaus. He stayed with them, conferred the powers of the Holy Spirit on them. So that's written in the book of John, I believe, said the things that Jesus did, if we wrote them all down, would fill more books than the world could hold. So it is probable that Jesus relayed to them what happened, because when you find Jesus resurrected, they're probably so dumbfounded and ask so many questions. Remember, doubting Thomas said, I won't believe it until I touch the wounds. In fact, it was in the readings this Sunday where Thomas goes and touches the wounds, says, now do you believe? And he says, yes, now I believe. And imagine he has a million questions, right? And Christ spent those weeks with them, 40 days before Pentecost. And so I'm sure he answered all those questions. But in a movie like The Passion, there are mystic saints like Catherine Ann Emmerich, who had these visions and these locutions of all these intimate details about Christ's life that she narrated to a scribe. And I think Mel Gibson literally used her revelations to kind of write part of the script for that. So I think there's a lot of possible answers, and you and I don't have any definite ones. But I do believe that Christ, as the apostle said, did so many things, they would fill more books than could fill the world. And it's been revealed to us.
Well, thank you for that. Here's another one from Sharon. Let's get back to the thread, because we're back. We only have a couple left here. Sharon says, I've finally caught up on my reading after being behind for 2 weeks. On page 221, part of the conversation between Marcelas and Justice. Nobody had to be on guard with him. Didn't have to pretend. Didn't have to lie. It made them happy and free as children. Did everyone respond to him that way? Asked Marcelas seriously. Almost everybody, nodded Justice. Oh, sometimes people that didn't know him tried to deceive him about themselves, but he grinned broadly as if remembering an occasion. But you see, sir, he was so perfectly in the truth that you couldn't lie to him or pretend to be what you weren't. It simply couldn't be done, sir, either by word, tone, or manner. End quote. It takes many days of walking together before Justice talks about Jesus, no matter how Marcelas prodded. When Marcelas gets angry about the injury to the donkey, it was the moment that Justice looked at Marcelas in a different light and began to talk, referring to Jesus as he. Marcelas refers to him as your friend. Such a casual conversation at first. Along the journey, there are tidbits of information, the knowing glances between people in all these small provinces, and Justice. Jacob's well on the outskirts of Sychar. Miriam's story. I'm hoping that Marcelas realizes the importance of walking the same paths and roads that Jesus walked on his journey with Justice. I'm really enjoying this read, Frank. The conversations have been amazing to read. Yes, these threads have been, despite everything what Stephen and I have been doing, which I've been getting so much value out of, and I know that you guys have too, because I've gotten the feedback all the time. But these threads, they're just, they're wonderful. They're really, really great. Let's see.
Really excellent comments.
Let's see. Here's one from Dyslexic Angel. These are always good too. Things that stuck out to me in this round of reading. Quote, all stories about Jews are painful, said Benjamin. I wondered, says Dyslexic Angel, is this true? I remember the movie Life is Beautiful. I love Roberto Benigni's movies that depicts, even in the worst of our life, it is possible to find beauty, kindness, and joy. Here's another quote. There's not much dignity left in the nation that has no respect for the words and works of geniuses who gave the world whatever wisdom and beauty it owns, end quote. I agree with this 1942 author's words because I see them as relevant today. Here's another quote. It is a queer thing, he went on, in a time of great need when powerful leadership is demanded. The people, confused and excited, hear only the strident voices of the audacious and refuse to listen to the voice of wisdom, which, being wise, is temperature. End quote. Sadly, I see this as relevant today, on the eve of the solar eclipse. Ha ha. These chapters of reading, I see the games that are played in all of life even now, the great chess game of life in a way of behavior that I have never played, have no desire to play, the lies, the deceit, the shell game of knowledge, the tiptoeing around people and powers, tender egos, all exhausting. I do not have the desire, energy, or will to behave this way. That's all for now, and I'm really enjoying this book.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Man.
Good souls are here, Frank.
I know.
Good souls are here.
And here's one last one. Gal 2, 2021 says, What really stood out for me in this section was the wide-ranging conversation that Marcelas had with Benjamin, pages 170 to 178. After a point, Benjamin begins to probe Marcelas with questions about his experience in Jerusalem over Passover. He seemed to have an intuition or discerned that Marcelas knew much more than he was giving out. On page 177, he says there have been many rumors, many idle tales reporting that the drunken legionnaires left the scene before he died, and that the friends of the Galilean rescued and revived him. Marcelas, well, he says, I happen to know that such tales are untrue. The executioners were drunk enough, but they killed the Galilean, and they left. He was dead. This is not hearsay with me, I know. And then, Benjamin, you're speaking important words, my son. My opinion is that Marcelas has just given the eyewitness account that would bolster the proof of resurrection versus revival of an injured man. I see this as a redemptive moment for Marcelas, even though he does not know it yet. Oh.
Beautiful.
Oh, okay. Though he was one of the several responsible for Jesus' death, he is one of the few who can attest to him truly dying. Those waiting to know if he truly resurrected from the dead will be strengthened and confirmed in their faith as Benjamin is here. Damn. Now Marcelas, even though he took on the task that mentally, spiritually snapped him in half for weeks and weeks and weeks, he actually becomes a pivotal piece in the proof of the miracle.
That's right.
Ow.
Beautiful.
Jeez.
Great insight.
Jeez Louise.
He was there when they stabbed the spear right into his heart. Yeah.
Unbelievable. All right. Well, listen, I guess any kind of closing thoughts, anything that you are projecting, anything that you think might be coming right around the corner, anything that popped up for you along the way, Stephen, I think this would be a nice place to start wrapping up.
Yeah, it would be. I want to just say this. I've been so excited about this book. I've been talking to my wife and kids about it. My wife, Faith. She grabbed this on Friday, and she's already about 10 chapters past me. In fact, she's on page 385. She can't put it down.
Oh, I'm so happy she's reading with us.
Yeah, she's just killing it. And it's been really fun because she and I have been talking about the parts together. And I love that you're doing this, Frank. You know, I thought it would be fun. But this is so much more fun, and your enthusiasm for this and watching you come through this, I think it's a real benefit. It's a beautiful thing for the whole community that you're doing this. So I'm super stoked about that. And I myself am being drawn so much deeper into this conversation and contemplation about the time after Jesus' death and through his resurrection and this tremendous journey that really is for us all. If you're not a Jew from the first century, this book is about us, and I'm kind of really deeply moved about how profound all the insights Douglas is giving us, and how we really ought to think about these things because the story is timeless. That's what I'm thinking right now.
It's there's a physical warmth around it all, and I 100% I'm on board with you, and well, I can't wait to start. I actually might read a couple of chapters tonight. Who knows? Anyway,
Me too. Well, I'm going to jump on it.
Listen, anything along the way, you give me a call, text, whatever the heck, and I'm just very happy that you're here again tonight, and everybody really has been enjoying themselves. I'll see you next time for session 4, Stephen.
Awesome. Thank you so much for everything, Frank.
All right, have a great night. Send my best to the family.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, there you go, ladies and gents. Wow. You know what? We have a couple of seconds. I'm going to do a little bit more, just a couple more from NJSF because he put so many good things down there. Let's see here. Let's see. I think it's just the last part. I love the following moments of Jesus as described by Justice. One day he bade some of us who were walking with him to stop and observe a field of wild lilies. You see how richly they are clad, he said. They do not work, they do not spin. Yet even King Solomon did not have such raiment. It was a pleasure to see him handle keen-edged tools. He was mortised timber. When he mortised timbers, they looked as if they had grown that way, Everything belonged to him, but he never owned anything. I love that whole, I love the compliments to Jesus's craftsmanship as a carpenter. I love the compliments there too. It reminds me of those scenes in Passion of the Christ, some of the best scenes in the movie, where he's just, building a table, a tall table, and Mary inspecting his work and all that stuff, just the playfulness and all that. It's wonderful stuff. Everything belonged to him, but he never owned anything. But he never thought he was poor. Justice raised up on one elbow, suddenly animated. He had the spirit of truth. Not many people can afford that, Here's another one. A talent for truth is real property. If a man loves truth better than things, people like to be around where he is. Almost everybody wishes he could be honest, but you can't have the spirit of truth when your heart is set on dickering for things. They couldn't lie to him, and so they told the truth, and the truth set them free. That's a new thought, declared Marcelas. Your friend must have been a philosopher, Justice. Was he a student of the classics? Justice was briefly puzzled and presently shook his head. I do not think so, he replied. He just knew. He just knew. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, there is one thing. I don't know if you've been in the thread. I did contribute something to the thread today. I think it's very rare I contribute something to the thread. And this is what I wanted to show you. This, where the hell is it? Right around here. This hour-long loop. It's a Passion of the Christ ambient music mix. It's a scene. It's a captured scene from the Garden of Gethsemane. And I just love this background. I've been using it for work. I've been using it for reading. And it just keeps the mood. It keeps the mood very, 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 very authentic and warming. It calms me down, and contemplative as well. So I just wanted to pass that on to you, especially if you haven't been in the thread. Passion of the Christ, the ambient music, this in particular. This 1 hour I've just been getting lost in it. It makes the reading, especially subject matter like this, makes the absorption level so much heightened, very much more heightened. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you for the 7 o'clock show. Thank you for this. Thank you, Stephen Jonathan. It's a pleasure to do this with him, and I hope you guys enjoy yourselves. Okay, that's it. If I can contribute one thing, it is the music. Some good reading music. And if you want the link to that, if you don't know how to get to the thread, it should be pretty easy. It's one of the first contributions. If you want the link to that, just message me on Patreon and Subscribestar, email me, hit me up on Gilded, anything like that, and I'll get it to you. And you know what? To hell with it. I'll also put it in the chat right now. There you go. I will see you all tomorrow. Good night. Thanks for everything.